Okay, I've completed most of the shape modification, the line straightening and stuff. Reached a point where I wanted to cover a few subjects. In one of the earlier videos of this series, I mentioned that it's very difficult, close to impossible, to get large sections of stem material level with wood without there being a corresponding dent or swale in the wood. Now, if it's a tapered stem, there's only a small amount of material there, stem material, so that it's not nearly as much of a problem. But you start getting into, this is 3/4 of an inch slab there on both sides, or all sides, and that takes enough work to get it off of there that the collateral damage is the wood surrounding it, and you end up with an uneven line. And the harder you chase it, the worse it becomes. I see it a lot in lower grade pipes and amateur pipes. So here's the magic bullet for that. Look closely, and you'll see that, well, this, first of all, this matte area is this stuff. Nothing more than Scotch magic tape, the cloudy kind you can write on, not the clear shiny type. And apply it, stretch it around there. You don't have to pull it very tight, but you want it good and snug. And just treat it as if it's the wood. Go ahead and sand there while the vulcanite, or acrylic in this case, is getting abraded. You're also sanding the tape, but the stuff is fantastically resistant to being sanded. I have no idea what it is about the composition of the plastic they use, but with of course you're not trying to grind on it, but if you put even pressure on both the black and the wooden half here while that's been taped over, you'll be shocked at how long it takes to finally wear through. And that's your signal that you've gone as far as you can. And at that point, you peel it off and see if you've got the levelness you desired. If you don't, tape it up, do it some more. If you do, you're good to go. So that's one of the tricks I wanted to show you at this point in time. Also, I earlier said that it was only going to be this stick to this point, and that's was not the case. I didn't start the camera back up for it because it just made no sense, but to be 100% full disclosure here, I did use what amounts to a big boy version of this that's home brewed. It's just a piece of 80 grit, which is pretty rough stuff, that's been glued, affixed to a piece of like this shingle stuff. They call it shims. And that was so I could bring heavy pressure to bear on this area here. It was taking me too long with this guy. I started getting a bend in it from the pressure, and so switched over to this tool where I could really get some bite, and that took it down to where I wanted pretty quickly. And the other thing is this guy. Some people love him, some people hate him. I've got a good friend that's a pipe maker, says he can't make this work to save his life. And other people say it's the slickest thing they've tried. So you just have to try it yourself to determine that. And here's what I'm talking about. It requires that you pinch it. Well, first of all, this is just a acetal rod, a plastic rod, although a piece of brass or aluminum tubing or whatever, doesn't matter. And that's a mouse pad, a thin one and a thick one, that's been taped on there. It's no rocket science involved. Using this type of device requires a coordinated pinch and roll motion like so. And as long as you're aware of the fact that you don't want to go past your line, so to, dig a deep trench in there, but check frequently, that's the cleanest and smoothest way that I've that I've ever come up with for sanding radii. I think that's the right plural for radius on concave curves. And concave curves are far more difficult to deal with as a rule than convex curves. So I did use that, and I did use this, but now we're here. I'll have to take that tape off to determine if this needs any more lowering. It doesn't look like it. Then it's just a matter of using a fine grade of paper, finer, over the entire surface and getting the stem in shape. Now the retaining nomenclature is a bit of a problem here. Well, not a problem, but a challenge in that it's not wickedly deep. It's acceptable, but it's not super deep. So we have to be careful. And if you're going to take off the finish and whatnot, naturally you risk erasing that, which we don't want to do. And the key here will be to not use something that is soft and spongy like the end of your thumb or a piece of rubber, because we don't want conformity. And that's how the edges, at a very small scale, but there are edges to that stamping, and we want them to stay sharp and clear. And the best way to do that is with a firm sanding tool of some kind, like this is just a flat piece of metal. I think that, yeah, there's a plastic on one side of it, so it's got an ever microscopically flexible layer there, but not enough to matter in this case. And then using a very fine grade of paper, like 1,000 or 1,200, going after this. And just be gentle and remove the least amount of material possible to achieve the goal, because you want to get that stamping to survive. So I'll be doing that. And let's see, that's about it for now. Oh yeah, one more thing. Saddle stems are a bit of a challenge for a lot of people, because they assume that because they are round, or this area that they want here is round, they make the assumption that they should use this kind of tool to gain that or get that. Now that can be done. I've seen some very high level pipe makers do this, and I suppose they just learned that way from the get-go. But something that doesn't require much learning at all and is ridiculously easy is to get cork. And the yoga people sell blocks of cork. You can get it online. It's a headrest or a balancing pad or something, I don't know. It comes in big bricks, like size of a loaf of bread. Slice them off, grind them to the shape that you want, affix some sandpaper to it, and then you've got this sort of thing. And you get a perfectly constant radius. The paper won't load up because the cork is just ever so slightly springy. And it's like, damn, there's nothing to it now. And it saves you from all of that business of using files, and then the file leaves a slight groove even though it gets the radius you want, and then you end up chasing yourself. But in this case, the sandpaper stops cutting as the tape here is approached, meaning you can push evenly on the entire surface, but you'll only get a cutting action where you want it, and it will fade to zero as it approaches this tape. So you get a natural dissipation of the grind, and so no lines or grooves are left. So I've got a whole box full of these things that I made over the years. Highly recommended. So I'm going to be doing that stuff, and we'll turn the camera back on if something of interest pops up. Alrighty then.